Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Certain field goals require more guts to call than others. That's just a fact. When you think of some of the greatest kicks in NFL history, as great as these plays were, they weren't exactly gutsy play calls. Most of these kicks, like Adam Vinatieri's game-tying field goal in the 2001 divisional against the Oakland Raiders, Matt Prater's record-breaking 64-yard field goal, and Tom Dempsey's kick in 1970 against the Detroit Lions that went 63 yards, were one of two things. They were kicks made out of necessity due to the situation of the game, or there were kicks where they were no harm whatsoever if they missed, like the end of the half where the other team wouldn't be the beneficiary of great field position. When I think of gutsy kicks, I think of field goals that had no business even being attempted, where the probability of making the kick was slim to none, and where if the kick missed, it could have been absolutely disastrous due to the opposition's starting field position. Basically, these are the kicks where a coach is going to look absolutely stupid if it backfires. And I might have found the gutsiest kick in NFL history. In a 1977 game against the Philadelphia Eagles, Washington won the game because of a field goal that had no business whatsoever being attempted. And this is the story behind that. Before we talk about the kick in question, we need some context going into the play. It's November 13th, 1977, and Washington is traveling to Veterans Stadium to take on the Philadelphia Eagles in this NFC East matchup. Remember that back in 1977, only 4 teams in each conference made the postseason, with just one wild card. So to say that this is a big game for Washington and Philadelphia would be a massive understatement. Dallas has the division on lockdown. 8 weeks in and the Cowboys have yet to lose a game, sitting at 8-0 during this 14-game season. That means that Washington and Philadelphia have to fight for the wild card, with Washington currently at 4-4 and Philadelphia at 3-5. With the Cardinals leading the wild card hunt at 5-3 and Detroit and Atlanta at 4-4, this meant that this was almost a must-win game for Washington, and it was absolutely a must-win game for Philadelphia. Now these teams were squaring off on a cold, windy day in Philadelphia to keep their seasons alive. And to start off, this was a battle of the defenses. In the first half, there was only one score, and that came in the second quarter when Ron Jaworski hit Tom Sullivan for a 21-yard touchdown strike to put the Eagles up 7-0. Joe Theismann and the Washington offense struggled early, including an interception on the second drive of the game, a couple of sacks, and a fumble by Mike Thomas in the second quarter, which set up the Philly touchdown. In the first half, Washington didn't run a play in Philadelphia territory until there was 1 minute left to go. That drive ended when Mark Moseley badly missed a 48-yard field goal wide right. Want to get an idea of how ugly that first half was all around? Philadelphia was 2 for 8 passing, and they were winning the game. It was one of those days. In fact, it was so ugly for Washington that at halftime, linebacker Hal McGlinnan displayed his frustration by throwing several chairs in the locker room at the wall. But things picked up once the second half rolled around. Washington, which hadn't scored a touchdown in 9 quarters and had an offense that was struggling in just about every sense of the word, finally broke out of their slump when on the opening drive of the third quarter, Frank Grant caught a 14-yard touchdown by Joe Theismann to tie things up. The score would stay that way through 3 quarters, though Philly would break the deadlock early in the fourth when Ron Jaworski showed some incredible wheels. In Jaworski's entire 15-year career, this 44-yard run would be the longest, and it's a heck of a run. Jaworski would eventually punch it in from a yard out to make it a 14-7 game. On the ensuing drive, Washington had a chance to get some points when Mark Moseley lined up for a 40-yarder, but this one wasn't even remotely close. Moseley was now 0 for 2. Keep that in mind. Washington was able to tie it up on their next drive when Theismann hit Danny Buggs for a 5-yard touchdown on third down. Now it's 14-all. Anyone's game. And after forcing a 3-and-out, Washington had a chance to take the lead for the first time today. Eventually, Washington is able to get it down to the 37-yard line, though after getting stopped on 3rd and 10, they're left with a difficult situation on 4th down. There's 3 minutes and 41 seconds left in the ballgame. Since they're not going for it, there's 2 things that Washington can do in that situation. Number 1 is punt the ball away. Play the field position game, especially since Mike Bragg led the league at the time in punts inside the 20-yard line. But number 2 seems almost ridiculous. Number 2 is to try the field goal. Let's review why this seems like a bad idea on paper. First, Moseley was having an awful game. He was 0 for 2 and none of his kicks were even close. Second, you had 18-mile-per-hour winds, along with a wind chill of 25 degrees. These were not easy conditions to kick the ball in, especially since Philadelphia was 0 for 2 on field goals so far as well. Number 3, this would have been a career-long field goal for Moseley, just to make things even more difficult. He had never hit a 54-yarder in his career. In fact, Moseley had played in the NFL for 7 years before, and his longest kick ever was 49 yards. Prior to 1977, he was 0 for 9 on field goals from 50-plus yards. And number 4, if you miss this kick, you are giving Philadelphia the ball near midfield. They could theoretically run out the clock and be in a good enough spot to win the game. The reward of taking the lead is great, obviously, but it is such a high-risk play. Head coach George Allen looked at Moseley after the third down play. Allen asked Moseley, "What about it, Mark?" Moseley simply said yes. He was confident in his ability to make the kick. Despite being 0 for 2, despite never hitting a kick from that distance, despite having missed 5 of his last 9 kicks over the last 3 weeks, despite the winds, and despite the field position probably costing Washington the game if this backfired, Moseley thought that he could make it, and Allen waved Moseley onto the field. He was going to try a 54-yard field goal. What happens next might be, considering the circumstances, the gutsiest field goal in NFL history.
And now 4th down comes up, and Mark Moseley trots out, towel in hand. Heisman his holder, resplendent in a purple turtleneck.
You realize that this is going to be like a 54-yarder. 54 yards. Got a lot of wind, strong wind behind him. I think he's got the foot to do it.
Eagles have nobody back. Here they come. There's the hit. Wow, he got a full charge into it. Isn't that something? It's good. A 54-yard field goal sends the nation's capital into a degree of jubilation. Boy, that was some hit. He got all of that.
Did he get it all?
62.
Yes, it would have. Did we say at the beginning what this win was going to be a factor in this game? And the leg of Mark Moseley.
Somehow, Moseley was able to hit it, and those 3 points would be the difference, as Washington won the game 17-14. Moseley said after the game that he loves Coach Allen, saying, "I have a lot of faith and confidence in my ability, and Coach Allen knows what he's doing. He knows when I feel good and when I feel bad." As for Allen, I think even he was a bit surprised that the play worked. He said it's a tough decision. If he misses, it's a bad decision because they got field position. He came through. He even told Moseley on the sideline that if he missed the kick, it would look like an awful decision. Fortunately for everyone involved, Moseley was able to drill one of the biggest field goals of his career. Oddly enough, this is not the first time I made a video about Moseley, as I made one about the time he was with the Cleveland Browns about a decade later, if you want to check that out in the upper right corner. Unfortunately for Washington, this game wouldn't make a difference in the long term. Washington would go on to tear the rest of the way, and would finish the season at 9-5. However, the wild card was won by the Chicago Bears, who started the season 3-5 but then shocked everyone and ran the table, and then beat the New York Giants in overtime on the final day of the season to take that final playoff spot. But it doesn't take away what Mark Moseley did on this day, as well as what George Allen decided to do. This kick had no business working, and yet somehow it did. This might just be the gutsiest kick in the history of the NFL. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaredGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters who help with the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.